To our curriculum committee meeting of August 15th, 2017. And while we are waiting for two more board members to show up, we will get started. And we can begin with introductions and administrative remarks.
Great,
Dr.
thank
McQuiggan.
you. Welcome back, everyone. We didn't have a meeting in July, so we have quite a bit of catching up to do tonight. Just a few general remarks. First of all, we would like to welcome our new student representative and teacher representative. Olivia, is it Gusdorf, right? Your last name? Gusdorf. Thank you very much. And Andrea McMenamin from the middle school will be with us this year as members of our curriculum committee meeting. Also, a quick congratulations to our new Dr. Jim Kearney, who was with us tonight. Jim finished his dissertation defense just about a week and a half ago, so he's got a new title. Very exciting. And then a general update on our summer programming. Once again, we ran 5 different summer programs this year. We had 78 students participate in the summer reading camp, which is for our kindergarten to 3rd grade students. Always very popular, and students have a really great time with some of the activities and also work on improving their reading comprehension skills. We had our English language learners in this summer. Only 36 students in that group. It was a little bit smaller than usual, but we do have students from kindergarten through 12th grade who participate. We have for now, I think it's our 4th year in a row, our expanded ESY program, extended school year. We had 81 students participate, again from kindergarten through 12th grade. The high school summer math program ran again this year with 28 students, and Mr. McBride was the teacher over there at the high school. And then for the first time, we had our STEAM in the summer camp, which was full, and I think it was a week or so. Packed registration with 48 students participating in that. So we had almost 300 Radnor students in the buildings over the summer. Announcement again about George Corus. Last year we looked at his book, gave out copies of it at our meetings. Our teachers and our administrative team have had book studies around his book, The Innovator's Mindset, and he will be here on August 30th, starting at 8 a.m. For a 3-hour talk, and then in the afternoon he'll be traveling over to Garnet Valley to work with the teachers over there. I wanted to give a quick update on ESSA only because it's been in the newspaper. There's some different articles floating around because there are some hot topics related to it. As you know, ESSA was reauthorized last year, and very recently Pennsylvania came out with their version of how they're going to be interpreting ESSA for the state of Pennsylvania. So there's been a lot of public input over the last year and a half or so around the things that we love and the things that we're not that crazy about regarding PSSAs and keystones. So the state has tried to respond to some of those things, and some of them are quite attractive and interesting. We'll be doing a more comprehensive update on the Future Ready Index in, I think, 2 meetings from now, but just in line with what you've been reading in the newspaper. The first thing is that we'll be moving the baseline year to 2014-2015, and the target for closing half of our achievement gap will now be the year 2029-2030. So you can mark your calendars for that goal. So we will be charged with the task of closing 50% of our achievement before that time. So if you like long-range planning, there you go. Schools are still required, although there was plenty of feedback to the contrary, schools are still required to test students in grades 3 through 8 at least once in high school in mathematics, science, and English language arts. So I know a lot of the feedback from the constituents and teachers and administrators and whatnot was, we don't like the test, let's get rid of them. But because of the federal mandates, we have to have some type of test in place, so those things are still present. Good news. PDE is going to be reducing the testing time for PSSA, and that will start this spring. So the reading section of the PSSA will eliminate 1 complete section, the math test will eliminate 1 complete section, and the science test that's in place for our 4th and 8th graders will be eliminating some of the questions. So it is predicted that we should be able to reduce testing times by about 2 full days.
Awesome.
So that is a win-win as far as those people that have been following this topic. 8th grade will still have to take 2 math tests. There was a lot of feedback about if 60% of our 8th graders are taking the Keystone in algebra, why do they always also have to take the PSSA in math? And the answer is that if we substitute the PSSA in math with the Keystone, we need to add another test at the high school. So there really wasn't a way to get around that. One way or another, it ends up being 2 tests. It's just because we have a high number of students that are accelerated, it just happens to occur for them at an earlier time. So 95% participation is still required. One of the challenges that we often deal with is the number of students who choose a religious exemption, but we are still required to have 95% of our students participate. And the Future Ready Index, which is one of the measures similar to the school performance profile, will be published next fall. And the last big piece of the new plan is around career readiness. And I know Kevin Kane has talked about this a little bit. They've been working on the district's 339 plan, which requires us to have career readiness factors in place that are measured at grades 5, 8, and 11. So we will have a formal plan we'll be submitting this year, and those things will actually be measured, and there will actually be some accountability to make sure that we have those things happening in place for our students. So these are really just the big highlights. Again, these are probably the hot button topics that you'll hear about and read about in the newspaper, and we'll get more deeply into the Future Ready Index when we get closer to that reporting window.
The career readiness, you mean?
The Future Ready Index will be the score that pulls all of these factors together.
Got it.
Similar
Yeah.
to the way our SPP did in the past.
Right. Okay, very good.
All right.
Are there
That's
any
a lot.
questions?
That's
All right, moving right along.
All right, thank you. All right.
Oh, wait.
Maybe that's Lydia.
Okay. Hello, Lydia. Happy to have you. No, that's okay. We've just gone through the administrative remarks, and so I'm about to
Yes,
call
you
for
do.
public comment. Is there any public comment?
Wait, before you do that, did you introduce?
They were introduced, yeah.
Roberta Winters, 326 Williams Road. Is that on? I think it
Yes.
is. Okay.
Hi, Roberta.
How you doing?
Good.
Hope you all had a great summer, and I just was really pleased tonight to see the enrollment projections and the class size numbers on all those charts, because I think it's really important that not only we see them early, but also, keep our eyes on those places like that fourth grade bubble at the elementary school that I was looking at, and I know there were some middle school classes above the maximum prescribed. And I think, we really need to keep an eye on that and start early and be proactive, because it's really hard once school starts to make any changes. So I would really encourage people who look at those numbers, and when those bodies start showing up those first day or two of school, to make sure we make some fast changes so that kids get in the right place with the right number of teachers and don't end up with what happened last year, when we found out a little late that some of those classes were big numbers and they were probably not in the best interest of the students. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Judy.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. Judy Sherry, Governor Circle, Newtown Square. I just first want to talk a little bit about communication. My first question was a number of the committee meetings for August, facilities, policy, and government relations, communication, were canceled. I guess policy was moved to July, so it was probably just facilities and government relations and communication. Why were those committee meetings canceled?
Since we're running this one, I don't.
Okay, well, I'm curious about that because they didn't meet in July. That seems like a long time. It takes, as far as I can tell, and I've asked other people, a minimum of 4 clicks to access materials for today's meeting. When you look on the home page, which if I were kind of a new person coming to the meetings, that's where I would look, and you see the listing and you click on curriculum, you get sent to a page that says agendas are typically available Friday before the event, but there's no way of getting to the agenda from that part, that referral. So you have to go back to the front page, as far as I can tell, look up board, look up meetings, click on meetings, then go and click on like curriculum for this year, and then once you get to curriculum, they have to click on the date, and then you finally get to the materials. And it just seems like in this day and age, there should be direct access to materials without that you almost need a guide to get to it. Also, you've changed the board business meeting, which was originally scheduled for August 22nd, and it's now August 29th. And I do think if people have that on their calendar, should be some indication on the front page that things are changing. So, Communications Committee did not meet this month, but they're my communications issues that I've brought to curriculum because they kind of affect you as well. On the analysis of assessments, which was interesting because I had also heard that the amount of time for PSSAs was going to be reduced, so it's really great to hear that. I just, when I look at this chart, which, again, it's kind of nice to have them all together, but to be, when I look at 1-minute probes, for instance, listed on the chart, I wonder, how does that work in a classroom? And I would be interested as we get to this part. When you're 1 minute checking around the classroom for each student, what are the rest of the students doing? Or is this someone else that comes in and does the 1 minute? I don't know. But again, when this comes forward, I would be interested in hearing about that because it sounds like, oh, no time. But if it's the whole class is sort of has to wait around while 1 minute's going on, then it might be more time consuming than it appears. Also, there's comments that say, which I can't even see here, approximately 1 hour per subject area. Well, what does that actually equal out to? How many subjects are we talking?
She's
So
looking at an
again,
attachment.
I'm looking at this sheet here
Yeah.
currently.
It's in our
So when we get to that presentation, that's just something I happen to notice. And while I'm at it, by the way, it's interesting to hear a summer program update, but to see it connected with what we did in previous years would be very helpful, so that you could say, oh, wow, we're really up in numbers this year, or, oh, this program doesn't seem to be attracting following. So, again, just to have it in context would be really helpful. And then my next topic is on concussions, which I guess my point is the board looking at recommendations to reduce or eliminate sports practices like tackling in football practices or headers in soccer practice that result in head injuries? And that's my question. And then someone brought to my attention that there's a sports concussion event coming to Radnor, which is going to be given by Penn Medicine on Thursday, August 31st, from 7 to 8:45 p.m. in the conference room at Penn Medicine Radnor. And it's going to be given by Daniel Goldstein of Penn Medicine and Fitness and Sarah Slattery of Penn Medicine, Internal Medicine and Sports Medicine. And what's interesting, I know for a fact that Sarah Slattery went to Radnor. She's a...
That's a name I recognize.
Yeah, well, Frank and Molly Slattery were
Right.
both, Frank, very active in the schools.
Oh,
So this
yes,
is their
yeah,
daughter.
yeah,
And I think a lot of them played lacrosse. They went on and
Yes.
played in some Ivy League schools. But this says recently a study, which is what I brought in, Risky Business, all of these different articles that have just come out, Time to End no, that's City Wages. Study reaffirms dangers of the game. I think it would be, and they say that this is actually designed for, this event is designed for parents, coaches, and athletes. So it might be a great thing for some of our coaches, administrators to attend, and it's so convenient. It's right here. So
Yeah.
it's right next door. So I
Well,
bring that to your attention.
thanks for calling that to the attention.
And I have some extra copies of that, should someone want to follow through on that. I noticed that career education was mentioned. I happened to have a caddy this summer that went through TE, and I was asking them again about their internship program that they give to seniors in the second half of the year. What are we doing right now with seniors? Do they have, at one point we were doing a play and a show, got a little controversial also at one point. I don't know what we're doing when seniors become accepted in colleges. There's somewhat of a correlation between their lack of excitement over achievement academically, if I'm putting that
I'm quite familiar with the problem.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
This young man was really raving about it because he happened to get, I would love us to kind of look into that to see if it could be implemented. We do a little internship program, I think, with the alumni group, but this opportunity, he said, oh, we can trampoline this to improve our resumes, and sometimes he said, for me, I took an internship in an area where I thought I would just really love doing it, and I found out I didn't like doing it. So it was really helpful for him to find out this is not something I really want to go into. And there's a chance then if you have like a month-long internship that you'll be able to use it in the summertime or in following years if you get connected with an organization. I think it's a good program. It sounds like a good program. I think it would be worthwhile our looking into it. And then another question, to a completely different topic. Is Radnor addressing the opioid crisis? And if so, how? Do we have students that are affected by opioid addiction or abuse? That's been a big news getter these days, so I'd like to have some kind of update on that. And my final comment, which is on a completely different topic. This was a topic in the paper, Why Don't Philly Kids Deserve Art? This was critical of the fact that the art district in Philadelphia is in storage. We have an art collection here. I think that's significant. I never quite understand what is happening to it. Is it in storage someplace and it comes out once a year? What's the best use of those donations that have been made to us? Or maybe it's not in storage. I don't know, but I'd like to hear an update on it. So thank you very much.
All right. Well, that was very full. Thank you very much, Judy. Some of these things I will say we've had some early discussions on internally, including the question about opioids. So I appreciate your bringing that up, as well as the concussion seminar.
Okay, I need some clarification. Which one is the new one?
The agenda hasn't changed.
I have two agendas for you.
Can you see it, Kelly?
Which one are we working on?
What you got today are your updates.
This is for today. Which one's the good one? Okay, this was in my packet.
That's fine.
Got it, okay. I don't know why it was in my curriculum packet. Gotcha.
It says finance.
So anything that's updated, remember the enrollment numbers, we weren't going to close until first thing yesterday morning. So anything that's new since we had our pre-meeting last week or since we posted on Friday is in your red folder.
All right, so this,
It's
What's the date
enrollment.
on that?
That's as of yesterday morning. Yes.
But that
Thank
wasn't
you.
online.
No.
You had a new one posted yesterday, but it was not.
Online? Oh, yeah, it is online because
I went on this afternoon and there wasn't.
I had 2 community members email me about it. So somebody, did you
two-
click 4 times?
The two. Did I click 4 times? A comment on the clicking. Hi, I'm Cindy Spurtle, 106 Valley Forge Terrace, Wayne.
Hi, Cindy.
Hi, I was getting ready to watch the commissioners' meeting last night. The township site, you go directly to the agenda and attachments, clicking on the homepage.
I
So
think
that's
that
just a comment.
I think we can pass that along to Mike Petiti and see if he can't make that happen. And I see Amy in the back.
hey, listen, I can't even keep the agenda straight.
So I don't know if you've heard this, but it's come up a couple of times. It's when you click on the fact that the meeting's happening, shouldn't you be able to go straight to the agenda? It would be a nice feature instead of having to click through to, Judy counts 4 clicks until you go back to the board page and so
It
forth.
is 4.
And so at any rate, I mean, that's come up before, and every time I have to go on and look for something, honestly, I think the same thing, and just, like so many things, just get over it and move on. But I think it's reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. On the, a couple, thank you for the updates on all the summer programs. And I have a question that I asked prior to the summer programs, and that was about STEAM and whether or not as of the popularity, result of the popularity of the STEAM program this summer, whether you will be considering adding art to the STEM program for the year coming up, and so I expect maybe we'll hear that.
I can talk about that. We're always looking for connections, whether or not we can bring in the arts. And anytime that we can bring in the arts, we certainly do. I'm always hesitant to make sure that we're not looking for false connections. So we're being very purposeful about it. In the STEAM camp, there were definite connections between the digital arts and what we were doing. And it also had a nice acronym with STEAM in the summer. So it did work there. For our elementary STEM night, we do actually have arts with incorporated in elementary STEM night as well. So I think I'm going to consider adding that to elementary STEAM night. But we're always looking for those natural connections, just making sure they fit, and that we're not just making it seem like it fit, if that makes sense.
And the reason I had asked is I know some of the schools in the area are offering the STEAM, some of the private schools, STEAM, the addition of the art program. Also, a question that someday I'm going to get an answer to, and that is there somewhere planned, and I know as the year gets busy, for a review of the full-day kindergarten? We know, my guess is that it probably costs more, number one, because it's full day versus half day, but number two, I think we are at a time 3 years in that we could see if there's any sort of a difference in the students that are now going into first, second, and third grade. Then you brought up the
So
PSAA.
actually, is there an answer to that?
Yes.
Because honestly, I know I've been asking too.
It
so
is,
could-
it's on for
on
April.
here.
But I mean, we're really going to have a full-blown discussion on it.
Yes, it's
One of the
draft.
things we were waiting for
Well, you
with
guys
full
had a
day.
pre-meeting. I didn't get the
Sorry.
benefit of a pre-meeting, so.
One of the things we were waiting for with the full day kindergarten was that movement of that class of
There it
students
is.
to third grade. It's the first year we have an availability of standardized assessment data, and it's a critical year for the learning to read strategies and the types of the assessments that we do around that. So that is scheduled for April 17th.
All the way into April?
Well, it would be the end of their third grade year.
Okay. On the PSAA changes, which I know everyone's been asking for and discussing in the reduction in the time spent, I just had a curious question as to what the feelings of the staff are based on the changes that were just released, I believe, this week or last week, and you brought that up. I also had just a few questions this tonight. On the professional development themes page, the guest speaker or keynote speaker or whatever, I was curious as to the cost to bring him in, but even more so, the selection process. How was he selected? Did someone recommend, or you just felt this was where you needed to go this year, that type of thing? And on the enrollment update from the dual slide, I believe that possibly the reason for the two slides is to show that pulling out the music, that the percentage, you're much closer to the size of the class that you want to be. I'm guessing that's why you did it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just have something that was curious that I read this weekend when I was catching up on my newspaper reading. In the Wall Street Journal, they had it was titled 19 is the New 60. And what that means, if you can almost guess, is the lack of exercise of the young people today. And so this is a woman that wrote the article. I've got copies for everybody if you might like to read it. And she's a founder of an organization called Free Range Kids, so you can get an idea of where they're coming from. Her recommendation was to extend the school year until 6 o'clock, the school day till 6 o'clock, so there's exercise. Part of the reason is not only exercise, but they tested 12,500 kids between the ages of 12 and 19, and the concern is that they're not getting enough exercise based on the way things are today, plus the fact that with organized sports, the feeling in this article is that they're not building any crucial skills like focusing and creativity and leadership and get to solve your own arguments, that type of thing, important to growing up. But I thought this might be able to be worked in recess, which I believe is still something that's offered, and decisions that are made as to whether or not to reduce the amount of time of recess. It may not be an important thing. So just a curious, I'll leave these here. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're still open for comment?
Yeah, quickly, though. Hey, Gail.
Hi, guys. So I'll go through, they're kind of very disparate points, but I wanted to say for the record, post the reorg, we were very happy that Kelly Murray is still on math and science. We want her to say, I spoke to Patty about this, that we had a June Radnor Partners for STEM meeting, and everybody was like, Kelly, you're not going anywhere, are you? We really want you. And she said, no, it does not appear to be that way. So I figured I would come in this public forum and make sure that everybody knows how keen our group is to see that Kelly remains where she is, that we have continuity, and she did an exceptional job with math. I wish and I hope that that process would be followed and replicated, in particular on the English language arts audit that I've been dying to hear more about. I'm definitely seeing both of my kids not writing enough, not writing clearly, spelling, punctuation, grammar, cohesively, and in an open-ended way. They're getting, my daughter in elementary school is getting a lot of writing assignments inside very convoluted up to 26 to 30 point rubrics, and she's just finished second grade. So I want to see them writing on their own in an open way. Write your representative a letter. Write the school board president a letter. Right, so the kids can just practice on their own writing in a somewhat sustained way. So I really hope to hear a lot more about the English language arts audit. Okay, so that's my piece on that, but just don't do anything with Kelly Murray, please. Looking at the enrollment numbers, of course, the West people are always very attuned to how large the school is, and when we get the large class sizes, you saw fourth grade in there at 24 to 25, because I guess they took a teacher away from fourth and put it to second, so there's going to be 6 second grades. The school, my daughter's going into third grade, but I know there are going to be parents that are worried about that, and 24 to 25 in an elementary school class, to me, is not the standard I hope we're looking for. It should be lower. I think the teachers have a challenge with that many kids in a school that's that hectic, because it's a very hectic school with almost 600 kids in it. And then the administration has been hearing about me. I have the same continuing concerns at the high school about the management at the high school, the culture at the high school, that it, what I wrote down here is, I'm glad that some changes were made in administration, so maybe some more focus will be put at the high school in calm, quiet study and learning environments throughout the school. In some of the classes, I want to see that you have some teachers that do a beautiful job of structure, explicit instruction, put your phones away. You have some teachers that don't. I think we need a much more consistent policy that's enforced. And then when you look at, the kids have a lot of free time. They can have not a full schedule of classes. They can have other free periods. There's the block period that gives them time to mill around the school. And if you have seen, I have heard many times that the library, of all places, is an extremely loud, hectic environment. I don't think kids are sitting, studying in there or reading quietly. I know they're not. And that's true. I've seen the cafeteria with 300 plus kids in it. It sounds like a flock of seagulls. And that's there mid-morning, because it's one of the many free times, community periods. Not enough is being done with that community period. I understand that there was some desire to examine that a little bit, that maybe this isn't ideal, let's say. So I wanted to speak about that. So I said library, cafeteria, international cafe is the open area in between the two wings. That also is a place to mill around and not be, it's not an ideal education environment, let's say. So, and I think part of this, it relates to a building approach that's too laissez-faire. That's too much of, let's let the kids be in charge, let's let the kids decide. And I've seen it hurt my son's academic experience a great deal. It's not a Montessori school. I want to, on the tech integration, because I know in June you talked about Maureen's, committee to look at the one-to-one at the high school. One of the 3 options is Microsoft Surface. I just wanted to be sure that this group is aware when they're hearing there are a lot of hardware issues with the Microsoft Surface. Consumer Reports last week removed its recommendation. It has something like over 15% return rate, meaning they're breaking so much they have to take them back. So we don't want to get ourselves in a situation. It's a brand new piece of hardware on a brand new platform from Intel, and that would be the absolute worst case scenario, that we're going to spend the millions we spent on iPads in a second round of one-to-one, and it goes as poorly as iPads did. And then RMS program evaluation that's in for September. Would like some clarity on that. Don't understand what that means or what it's going to entail. Thank you.
Okay, I hope that's the end because I'm cutting off public comment right now so we can get to the program. First thing is the approval of the minutes. No problem? Okay. Minutes approved. Okay, Dr. McQuiggan, administrative reorg.
Great. Okay, so this is just a quick update to the committee. As you know, we went through an administrative reorganization, so we will be seeing some different faces as we move through our curriculum committee meetings this year. As you know, Dr. Murray and Dr. Kearney are going to be going out to our elementary buildings to support some of the assistant principal duties, both at Radnor Elementary and at Ithan Elementary School. And because of that, we've redistributed some of the curricular areas so that we can include all of our assistant principals in the process as well. So I've provided you a list of the contact people we'll be hearing from regarding each of those areas. We really tried to focus on areas of strength or areas of interest for those particular assistant principals. So for instance, Mr. Stango, who we often use as our example, was once an art teacher. So he is going to be taking the lead on K-12 art. And P.T. Kevkis will be taking over business, which as you know is just one teacher at the high school, and also the theater program, which again is one teacher at the high school. So we've put together what we believe is an equitable plan to get a larger group of people involved in the teaching and learning piece of what happens in our school district. And both Drs. Kearney and Murray are going to be leading a little curriculum boot camp for them on Friday to bring them up to speed with the process, how the process works, where we are, who their contact folks are, and to support them through that transition this year. All right, so this is just a reference for you, and again, as we hear from each of these different areas, who's in audit and things like that during the year, you'll know who to expect to see. All right, any questions about that? I also provided you with a list of our topics for the year. I'm not going to go through it month by month, but I will draw your attention to a couple of the topics on our agenda. There's an updated one in your red folder. It says updated 8/14/17 at the top. One of the things you'll see for September, we're going to be looking at district goal number 2, which is the middle school program evaluation. One of the district goals that were approved is we're going to be studying some of the programming over at the middle school and reporting out on that. So you'll hear about that next month as far as an action plan. You'll hear a mid-year report in December, and you'll hear some final recommendations in March. So you'll see that on our calendar 3 times this year. The adolescent sleep action plan is going to be also featured next month at next month's meeting. So again, you'll hear about the action plan next month, and you'll hear the recommendations. They're slated for the month of May. Okay. The other one I wanted to mention is in December. You'll see that we have the proposed district calendar. We usually do it in January. Sometimes, I think last year, it trickled into February. So we've moved that back before the holidays so that we have enough time to have discussion and make sure that our families and our staff have an opportunity to make plans for the following year, knowing what that calendar looks like. Down at the bottom, you'll see the technology device study, goal number 3. We're going to do a short update on that next month, and then we'll also be following up on that as the timeline was in both January and then again the following month in February. And in February, we're going to be talking about the English learner updates. There's a lot of updates from both the state and the federal regulations, so we'll have an opportunity to talk about that. And then, as we already mentioned today, in April, we'll be looking at the full-day kindergarten report for those students who are now our 3rd graders.
So I have a couple, one
Yeah.
thing, and honestly, I should have grabbed that policy number, but One item not on this list is there is policy, and I think it's controversial materials and subjects. or
Controversial
something.
subject matter 119, I think.
Yes, policy 119. That's one that we said we wanted to bring back. I think I've asked a couple of times to get that on the agenda.
Yeah.
Not so much related to what the policy currently is, because I know it had undergone a revision not that long ago, so I don't have a problem with the current content, but there is a matter of missing, there's a chunk missing around bringing in outside guest speakers.
Yes, and we did.
That is not covered.
We didn't go back and look at the policy last year, but I did work with the administrators for both the middle school and the high school on the notification process. I think that was sort of the missing link
It's
in
more,
there.
it's not so much notification, I'd like to review it.
Okay, we'll put that in. Anybody else? Nope. All right.
The only other one that if we can just double check, but my recollection is by school code, a board reorganization is in December, not January.
You know what? I just copied that from last year. That's probably the first month.
December.
It happens in December, and then is January the first month we have new faces
That's
at
when
the table.
normally that's when you would have subject changes to schedules and things
Right.
like that based on the new leadership, but yeah.
Right.
But the reorg is actually the first week of December, somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, the reorg is, but I don't know about I thought this is specific to the committee.
Yes.
And so I'm not sure when the committee reorganizes.
We could take it off the list.
Okay.
That was just a
Well,
note I
yeah,
had
I
from-
mean, that was the
That's when we
point,
did
but
it
I mean,
last
your
year.
If that's what that's about, then maybe we
Yeah.
just retitle it,
Okay, so curriculum reorganization.
just curriculum committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Okay. I don't think I don't think specifically now, although obviously we will, as subjects get raised, they
Yes.
will.
It's very much a draft, but
Yeah.
it's really good for us to start at the beginning of the year, at least having placeholders for some of those things that we know we have to do. We need to notify our buildings about program of studies, our data presentations and things like that, so that people can mark their calendars to kind of backwards map those
Got it.
responsibilities.
I agree, yeah.
All right, so
Lydia, do you have anything?
No,
Okay.
good.
I know it'll grow more robust as the year goes by.
Yeah,
Yes,
well,
it
of
is
course.
already very robust.
I'm glad it's not jam-packed already in
Yeah.
April.
Yes.
And it will adjust.
Yes.
I guess I'm interested to understand, and maybe it's not a now moment, but I want to understand this adolescent sleep action plan and how that works, because that is way more than curriculum. So I'm interested to understand how that's going to play into any of the other committees and what goes on with that and what that means.
Okay.
Thanks.
So while Dr. Rabarchik is getting set up, I just want to answer a couple questions that I'm able to answer around assessment. One of the questions was about the 1-minute probes that we'll talk about as part of the assessment calendar. Our students in the primary grades do a Dibbles assessment, and they are all completed by our literacy team. So our teachers don't do any of the assessment. The students are pulled out for their little 1-minute performance, and then the data is actually collected and scored and recorded and reported by our literacy team. So it's actually something that students quite enjoy, coming out of the room and getting an opportunity to show what they know. And I'm sure Tony will be able to answer other questions.
She answered the question. So
Thank
that
you.
is in reference to the 1-minute probe. So the 3-page document you have is regarding the assessment calendar for this year. Obviously, this will need to reflect some changes, only because of the PSSA announcement, the testing, that the amount of time is going to be shortened. So we will adjust that in regards to estimated time commitment for each of the elementary and middle school. And for some reason, unfortunately, on the middle school one, the NWA map is not a 1-minute probe, and neither does the math placement test or the nonfiction reading probe. So I will have the middle school correct that piece. But generally, this is a repeat of last year's assessment calendar. There's really no new changes to it. As I said, the only thing will be the reduced time in the areas of the PSSA based on the information from the state. So if there's any questions.
I think the other question was around the subject area assessment and why that has that general 1 hour per subject. I think it's NWA.
The NWA.
Because it's,
Yeah, the NWA does generally take 50 to 60 minutes for a student to complete each of the subject areas, math and reading. So they do go, they separate the test, and there's generally 2 to 3 weeks in between the math and the reading, one end or the other for the students. So they're not taking 2 consecutive hours of testing in 2 consecutive days. or even in one consecutive day, or one day, I should say.
So can you just remind again, I know we've had this conversation
Sure.
multiple times, but can you remind again, with all the different assessments, the NWEA map, and the Fontes, like, kids are overlapping, you're taking both tests. We've talked about trying to streamline tests. Can you just remind again why we're still continuing with the different tests?
Sure, and Dr. McQuiggan can speak to this as well, but they are two different assessments, and they bring along two different points of data that help to drive the decision-making. NWA, as you know, not only helps teachers to guide their lesson planning and their delivery of instruction, but also addresses the compass learning that's used as the blended learning opportunity on the technology platform that sets learning paths for those students based on how they did on the NWA. And then as the Fontes and Pinnell gives us a specific reading assessment according to the fluency and comprehension. So again, different data points to help us in driving that decision-making for students.
So we're confident, and I appreciate actually seeing it always, having it in a comprehensive way is very helpful. So we are confident that we are performing the minimum amount of tests to have the maximum amount of benefit to understand the instructional or inform the instructional education.
Yes.
At this
At
time, I
all
would say
levels.
yes.
At all levels.
And one of the things you would notice if you compared this assessment calendar to, say, the assessment calendar from 3 or 4 years ago,
Yeah, right.
although we've maintained both of those assessments, both the MAP and the Fontes Pinnell, we have significantly reduced the testing events. So as you know,
Right.
when we first had the MAP assessment, we were giving it 3 times a year, which was, a great deal of data and all of that. But now that we have the reliability and the validity built with years of assessment records, we've reduced that to either once a year or twice a year in all grade levels, and the Fontes Pinnell is the same for our grade level readers, where we didn't feel the need to be testing them as often because they were on grade level readers working in a grade level group. Their Fontes Pinnell is down to once a year unless the teacher really has a specific reason to sit with the student and do another assessment to discover some information there.
So for other than the exceptions where you have an incident like that, where you have to, where you're doing it very, very specifically for
Purposefully.
a child, are we also then confident that if this is the minimum amount of testing to get the maximum benefit, are we confident we're using all the data we're gathering? And how are we sure we're using all the data that we're gathering?
Well, that's one area where I say I'm going to speak to the elementary level just because I work with them more. I would say that over the last 5 years, we have definitely taken advantage of the data points that we are getting and helping to use that data to make the decision-making in our instruction. The teachers, based on their goals in their classroom, they're looking at the growth in the NWA for students to assure that they're making a steady uphill stream of that growth, and actually aligning it with the PSSAs when they're doing that. So I would say that they're all kind of combining, they're all molding into one now, where before they used to be seen as very specific assessments, where now they can kind of bring them all together and say, okay, this is the area we need to go.
So I would be interested maybe at some point to really kind of get a summary from the overall organization now that we're using things in this way and we've gotten to this level of streamline.
Sure.
What are the trend level takeaways that we're seeing? Because it's awfully hard for us to, clearly we're not getting down into the nitty-gritty detail of all these tests, and you guys are looking at that. So
Right.
really getting a meaningful report back about the trends that you're seeing would be really helpful.
Sure. And we can do that. And I think you're right. Instead of going very specific with every little detail of the assessment, too, which is really not helpful because now you're just overwhelming yourself and trying to determine which direction to go, it's more of that understanding the global of it and being able to proceed with student needs.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that at some point back on one of our agenda items.
Yeah, it occurred to me while you were having this conversation that we needed a lot of this data before when we were doing cross-class flexible groupings all the way down to second grade, and we were moving kids around every 6 weeks. But we're not really doing that anymore. So I see on here at least twice a year, we're looking for growth, well, 3 times, because we're doing NWEA EA maps twice a year for sure. And
Correct.
then we're also administering the PSSA, which hopefully has some value to us. So really, do we need 3 measures of growth now that we're not doing all that shuffling that we have, both elementary and middle school?
The map data was not used for our CCFG grouping. We were using pre-tests in the past to be using that. So you're right, though. We're no longer grouping, but it still would be the same data now that we're using. Being at an elementary school now and helping support in some of those roles, Dr. Kearney, myself, and Gabe Savage have been putting our heads together about looking at what do these data reports look like and what is really useful for teachers. We're in the process of putting together data packages that then teachers will get at the beginning of school to look at what do all of these data points point to, and leading data discussions with teachers so they can really get down to the nitty-gritty of what their students are doing and what their student needs are. And each one of these data points reflect just a slightly different information for us, but being able to have those data points to get down to individual students, I think, is really helpful.
But too, also being able to do that early in the school year. There's nothing worse than, now all of a sudden I got the aha, I understand, little Billy, but it's April. Absolutely. His year's gone by.
And this would be the 3rd year that they're putting out something. The elementary principals are giving their teachers a data package, as Dr. Murray was referring to.
Here's your list of students, and here's the data package that
Here's
goes
your
along with
Fontes
those
of Pinnell,
students.
your PSSA, your NWA, and everything, and seeing that growth as it's been.
And,
To me, that's like
Year
a
to year.
huge,
And even looking
Start of
backwards
school year.
a little bit, teachers have got the PSSA results from the students from last year to see how the students that they're sending forward have done as well. So they got that over the summer, and then we anticipate they'll come in and get data for their incoming classes before school starts.
and then the question is, right, with the newer teachers, are we sure that they've got the proper training to really understand it? Because it's a ton of information.
Are you taking public comment on assessment?
No.
Not in this part.
It also, along with what Patty's querying, I'm concerned with us reshuffling all these roles. And, God bless you guys for being so flexible. Now you're doing this, now you're out there doing that. But are we going to be able, I know that, because I'm an educator too, we sort of lean on the side of more data is better, the more data the better. But up to a certain point, none of us want to overtest these kids, especially the elementary kids. So we're collecting all this data, but we are so fluid in how we're changing what we're doing, because I know, having sat on this committee for 8 years, that your structure coming into this year is radically different than what we were doing a couple of years ago. And so maybe tests that, I know you guys have all been part of the team, but in a different capacity. So I don't want another year to go by where we're testing kids in the elementary school and we're still in the process of changing how the administration is using this stuff. And maybe we don't have the teachers up to speed with how to use that because we're changing what the administrative roles are. And so the meetings are going to look different. We're not going to have the team meetings, K through 12 anymore. We're going to be, certain people are elementary, certain people are high school now. So I don't want to test kids and then have us still like a step behind in how we're using this stuff.
Yeah.
So just really, we don't want to test kids if we don't, if there's any way to.
And Lydia, I completely agree with you, and that's something, as I said, I think over the 5 years, but the last 3 years in specific, the elementary group has really worked hard at trying to determine what are the specific points. Does it mean it's perfect? Probably not. And there'll probably be more discussion as we move forward and see what the new assessment brings too, the new PSSA with shortening the test and everything. Do we have what we need to determine, to address student needs? So I agree.
I would like to, go ahead.
I just want to
Go
just
right
also
ahead.
say, I'm very encouraged by just sitting and listening and sitting and listening to the comments, with both Jim and Kelly in the building, how they see how the teachers are using this and how they can help support that, I think is actually going to be a positive to that reorganization and a positive also to, how we continually, I think it is fluid. I think we always have to look at how we are assessing our students and how are we using that data and do we need to make adjustments to that. But I don't think the reorg is actually going to slow that up or if anything, I think it's going to enhance. And I was because your comments, as you said it, had me excited about, what you're seeing being in the buildings to help enhance that. So thank you for that. But I think we need to continually do that, and we need to, now with what we're hearing from the state with the PSSAs, we need to reflect as well. What does that change mean? I think everybody kind of is relieved across the state about what we're hearing from the state and what kind of changes that mean. And we need to understand exactly what it is in each of those subject areas is being reduced. And that is something that we're going to want to focus on as well.
That's actually an interesting lead-in for what I hope will be a wrap-up comment for this. And I'd like to hark back to what Gail said a few moments ago about writing. And she made some observations about her own children and her concern about writing. And one of the things that stands out in all of this testing, writing is not a subject that's getting tested. So I want to make sure that insofar as we're doing all this and it's important and it's necessary, it's also often the case that we're teaching toward what we're going to be measuring. And if we're not measuring writing, is that contributing to, ongoing concerns about how come our kids are not better writers? And so I would just ask broadly, in the context of thinking about testing, that we think about things that matter, that teachers can observe and teachers can accomplish in the classroom because they're teachers and because they know their students. And what is it we can have them do to assure that things like writing are not getting left in the dustbin as we're pursuing these goals? And then secondarily to that, and this is a camp on, I think, to Lydia's comments and yours too, Ken, to what extent are we getting marginal benefit out of this test? What are we learning that we absolutely did not know prior to the test? And I think that's a question that always needs to be in front of us, because we can go through all kinds of hoops, and at the end of the day, boom, you're like, yep, just what I expected. Well, if it's just what I expected, then why are we doing it? Because I think we can get caught up in this data, and lose sight of the fact that, good teachers often will know the answer before all the hoops get jumped through. So anyway, I just want to leave those as kind of just philosophical comments and hopefully wrap this up if we're done.
I know you're wrapping it up, but what I'm also just hearing as a takeaway too from the board is that as we're doing some of our data presentations in the future, that there's more of a focus on how are our students achieving in these individual skills, or how are our students achieving in writing, or if there's specific skills, what are the trends we're seeing? Not necessarily the trends about our percentage numbers. I mean, those are important. We have to look at that, but you want to see a little bit more focus on what we see within the individual skill attainment when we're looking at any, the different subject areas. Is that what I'm hearing as well?
Well, it's not just individual, but are children progressing and learning in areas that are crucial for their entire lives? I mean, at the end of the day, some of these things are important and some will go by the wayside, but writing is forever. And so when we're talking about something as central and as eternal a requirement in which people ideally are improving over time, we're not testing any of that. And that's okay. I'm not asking for another test. But I am asking that we not lose sight of some of these things that are as important, if not more important, than some of this other stuff. And remember that has to happen as well. And again, the marginal benefit of the test is a different issue. I mean, how much are you getting out of it?
You sound like me. You sound just like me. I'm always the one that said we need to teach to the whole child.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I specifically that resonates. Yeah. All right, we're done. Okay. All right, that's fine. We've been sitting next to each other for a long time, Lydia. All right, very good. So thank you very much for that. Great discussion. So it looks like we're to the curriculum cycle update. Is that right?
Just a quick update. I'm not going to go through the whole curriculum cycle again. But as you know, we operate on a curriculum cycle to make sure that each of our content areas receives its due attention on a regular basis. And coming up for this year, we're going to be looking at K-12 social studies. We will also be looking at our English Learner program, which is perfect because there are a lot of state and federal updates that are coming into place this year that will kind of fit nicely with that process. We'll also be looking at the library program and also be looking at the guidance program this year. So you'll see those various things pop up as we work through our calendar, and typically we report out on them the following fall, just like we'll be talking about the ELA audit this fall. I spent 4 days with the elementary language arts teachers, 2 days last week and 2 days the week before, and just to assure you, we spent quite a bit of time talking about writing. There's a lot of new yet old research out there about the writing revolution and getting back to basics and all these types of things. So it was a hot topic that teachers are very interested in delving into more deeply as you're interested in seeing that done.
The ELA audit, I don't think that's in this. Is
Oh, I think there's a section that says audit
English learners.
update.
English learners, not the learners, that's the second language.
October 17th. Audit report.
Audit reports, yes, October 17th. Because there were more than one, there's more than one area in audit last year. Thank you, though. All right, so that's just a quick update on kind of the year at a glance piece. We did give you a copy of the professional development theme calendar. We've talked about a lot of these things. We do try to map out our professional development at the beginning of the year. There are only so many in-service days, and we want to make sure that the various areas we need to cover during the year get their time and their place on the calendar. We do have 2 math and focus days this year, so there are 2 days when our K-8 teachers will be having in-service day, and again, in an effort to maintain that instructional time for our high school students will be coming in. We are having George Chorus, as I mentioned, on August 30th. There was a question about cost. He is a very costly national presenter. Our teachers who traveled to ISTE in Philadelphia, not this past summer, but the summer before, we had quite a large group go. Teachers and administrators saw him and were very passionate about bringing him to the district, as were the teachers from Garnet Valley. His fee it's $10,000 a day, which we split with both the Delaware County Intermediate Unit and with Garnet Valley. So we're very fortunate to be able to bring someone here for almost 400 staff members using that type of a partnership to help keep the cost down.
Will he be taped?
No, you're not allowed to
videoed?
tape him. But he
Can't-
does have a lot of video. I mean,
Okay.
you know, I saw his talk in Souderton. I don't know how much different it's going to be here, and it is taped, and it does mirror a lot of what
I should say video.
I
That's
think
taped
we
is
were
so
all
less
given
century.
a copy of his book.
No, we haven't.
So
No.
you can read his- yeah.
No. I have that. I won't be here. So.
Yes, and there still are copies of his book. If there's any other board members that haven't received one yet, they're outside the superintendent's office. There's still a few copies left. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention is just a reminder, we have one built-in snow day this year. It's the first time we have one built-in snow day. So if we have one snow day, we will add a teacher day, and if we have a second snow day, we will be adding a student day. So the feeling was, well, if we already have in-service days at the end of the year, and then every time it snows we add more in-service days, we're losing instructional time and replacing them with in-service days. So we're trying to get a better balance on those two things. So you'll see that the activities at the end of the year are designed to be fairly flexible, so that if there is some type of weather emergency that we need to respond to, we have the flexibility to be able to do that. Any questions about the calendar? Good. All right. Let's get on to the fun stuff.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, so K-12 handbooks, informational item.
So we have the handbooks on the schedule as an informational item. They are going to be made available to our students and families on the website at the beginning of the school year. So they were provided to the members of the board to review over the weekend. Any feedback that you have on the handbooks, you can direct to myself or to Dr. Barczyk, who's working on the elementary handbook. We have received some feedback from some board members. We've been doing some comparing across the 3 handbooks because, as you know, we've been working on standardizing them and making them a little bit more uniform from book to book.
Yeah.
Any substantial changes?
I think the most substantial thing would be some of the policy changes, so the immunization pieces and some of those things that you've seen come through policy during the year.
Yeah, but that's more like housekeeping of pulling that stuff in. But is there anything that's
Nothing that I would call.
really?
No.
The comments that I've seen so far have to do with consistency in the way we treat policies in the handbooks. And I think whatever our decision is around that, we ought to follow through, and it should be consistent across them, and we should know why, if we're not including everything, why we're picking the ones we're picking. That was picked up. And there were a few places where there were language language changes. So for example, when we're talking about dress code, we're using words like, well, we're suggesting that you do this, but if you do it, be prepared for this consequence. So that's not a suggestion, that's a commandment.
Right.
Or it's a rule. So tightening up some of that where we're a little too indirect, perhaps, and need to be a little clearer that this is not an option, this is what we need to have happen. There are a few places where that shows up. And then just, your basic proofreading for grammar and correct words and typos and that sort of thing.
So I was on vacation. I didn't get the chance to look through these because I literally just got them yesterday.
Still have time.
I will, but allow me to ask, because I'm just trying to peruse pretty quickly on here, to see if does it speak to the subject of opting out of tests?
Which one?
The district's policy on opting, or from a student handbook point of
No.
view, does it provide any guidance related to opting out of tests and what the expectations of the district would be if you choose to opt out of tests?
Yeah, I don't recall seeing that in the middle school or high school, but do you?
I
So-
think it was something that just basically said we first to the website,
Yeah.
that we were, because of the language that we had there.
So
I see,
where
page 30
is-
in the elementary is standardized testing.
Related to, right. But I mean, I would, that's not really a fluid thing, is it? I mean, I hope we're coming into a school year with a clear definition. If you choose to opt out, I see that, being out of school for religious reasons, which is the opt-out excuse, but I think we should state somewhere what the expectation should be if you choose to have your child opt out. We're not providing individualized education that day. Like what we've established as our guidelines are. I think we need to be clear about that for parents.
I think that's a really great question. There was a ton of confusion and last-minute flurry this year.
And the last paragraph of part of in the elementary one is, under state law, the school district is unable to grant requests to have a child exempt from taking the PSSA or Keystone assessment. The only allowable basis is to be excused from testing is religious exemption.
Right, but what it doesn't state is what does
The
your child
process.
do in that time
Oh.
and what parents
Yeah.
can expect from that. Because I know some parents believe that when they opt out of the test, their child should be able to go to a private educational space and be delivered education that day when we've got really the kids are taking tests. So is our policy that your child would then come to school and sit in the library or sit in a supervised what's the word that's not coming
Study
to my brain?
hall.
Study hall, thank you. I mean, whatever our policy is, I think we should clearly state what the expectations are. And I'm sorry, you wanted to say something. Did you have a thought?
I was going to say that my sister opted out of the PSSA last year. She was in 8th grade. And her experience was that they sat in the cafeteria and they were watched and they just had to sit there and do work. They couldn't speak or anything. So I guess it would be a study hall, but that's what happened at the middle school. I don't know. the
Yeah, and it
elementary
varies by
schools.
level. So,
Yeah.
for instance, at the high school where exams are scheduled, if a student doesn't take an exam, they go to class. So it will vary from level to level.
So I don't know, but maybe the mention here is go see the website for where we have
Yeah.
individualized by school, but then it needs to be up on the website. Because I just think parents have different expectations, and we can cut that off at the pass.
Yep, maybe a reference here to the website or something, or more detail here we could look to do. I think it was made more clear this past year. There was a reduction. The area, let's be upfront, the area where we've had the most religious exemptions has been in our middle school.
Right.
And 2 years ago, we had a higher number. It was reduced last year as the administrative team and the teachers tried to explain how we use this data and how this data is important for our programming and to make sure that we're looking at what skills those students are attaining. But that's something that has to continue, so that's a good suggestion.
Okay. Otherwise, I'll look through them, but you already have all these grammar-related people looking at it, so I'm not looking for any of that. I'll just see
The
if there's
grammar
any other-
police have arrived
Yeah,
and
'cause
spoken.
I certainly am not one of them. I'm normally being taken away by one, so.
And, the fine line that our administrators walk as they try to put the handbook together is, the handbook is designed to be parent and student friendly. So, there is an effort to make it, easy to read and user friendly. And, if we start including a lot of legalese and whatnot, people don't read it. So we have to strike that balance of, yes, we have policies, we want to make sure our language reflects those policies, but we also want parents to actually read the handbooks and students to understand what the context means.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I would rather it be less formalized and with, exact policies slapped in there. I would rather it be more usable so that people can look at it and actually read it and will refer to it and not read a paragraph and go, I have no idea what that said. That it might tie back to our policies, but if it's not helping us communicate to people, then I'm not in favor of that.
I just have one procedural question. Does everybody get a hard copy of this?
No.
No. So
They're
we're on the
online.
website, so we're clicking, so you're clicking clickable links. Okay, and then do we have any way of assessing whether the parent has read it, and is there a
So-
sign in return, or?
There's a sign-off form.
They have to sign that they read it. Do you think
Well,
that
it's like-
Radnor residents are sitting there reading an 80-page
No, well,
signing off?
it's like,
Let's be honest.
warnings on loading
Let's
software.
be honest.
You
They're
check it at the
not-
end and
They're not
go.
reading
Well,
it. They're going
and
to
the
return the
idea-
form 5 minutes before Johnny catches the bus. They're going to sign that they read it.
Right, but the idea is that they would know and understand where the reference is, and if they need to reference something on, whatever it might be, religious exemption, or, now it's starting to snow, I want to know what the KYW number is. Of course, we don't do that anymore. But I know where to look for it,
So last
right?
century, right?
Yes. We have 400 phone calls. Okay, so please, if you have feedback, please, if you could get it to us directly, that really helps kind of avoid the middlemen, and we can get back to the administrators that are in charge of the handbooks. As you mentioned, the middle school one is nearing 70 pages, so, it's quite the undertaking. And lots of people contribute to it, so I know that, having been through it from the beginning to the end, you get those different voices and whatnot, because it is a team effort to
Right.
put it together.
Okay, well,
All right.
very good. All right, I'm going to put that one to bed so we can move on to the enrollment update.
Okay, so enrollment update. So let's start with an overview. One of the things we said is that we were going to take a look in mid-August at what our enrollment figures looked like and make some staffing decisions in time to have responsible hiring practices in place and have teachers in front of students on the first day of school and students informed of who their teachers were going to be. So you'll see this is just sort of an overview for you. In our budget, we had 4.0 watch positions, and you'll see in parentheses there the ones that have been used up until yesterday morning at about 9 a.m. August 14th is when we did the cutoff. So we have a new Radnor Elementary School kindergarten position. Wes has a second grade position. You see there's 3 language positions there that are partial positions. So we've used 2.6 of the watch positions that were available in the budget. Then you'll see at the bottom we had 2 contracted positions, and that went to a .1 fax, which was over at the middle school. We talked at length about adding a 1.0 middle school teacher for the purpose of teaching mathematics across the grade levels, and that is in place. We also added a .2 chemistry at the high school, and then that's a split Spanish position you see at the bottom, .2 at the middle school and .4 at the high school. Remember, we've been doing some adjusting with different language teachers. We're very fortunate in that we have several language teachers that are able to teach more than one language. So as they make flexible choices about what they teach and become certified in different types of things and move around, we have some needs in some different language areas. So we have .1 available there and 1.9 used. And then you'll also note that you don't see our bucket positions there. We had those 2.0 bucket positions that we were holding in case we needed them to make the middle school schedule work, and those have not been used, and as of today, we don't anticipate that they will be used.
So can I, before we go deeper into that discussion, can I just ask one quick question? Overall, in terms, and I know that this is not curriculum specific, but I'm interested to understand, have we seen a lot of staff turnover this summer? I mean, have we lost teachers and replaced them that we hadn't planned when we did our budget back in June? Have we had a lot of staff rollover?
Nothing that I would consider significant. I mean, we had, one retirement over the summer after we
But
kind
other
of
than
closed
those,
the
right?
books on
Because
the
we,
year.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
No.
okay, good.
And then, of course, in addition to this, we had people who retired and were replaced and things like that, those
Sure, but those
natural
were
things.
planned.
Exactly.
And are we fully staffed?
Almost.
Okay. Will we
Almost.
be fully staffed by the first day of school?
That is the plan.
Okay. And any problems finding
We
staff
have,
positions?
I think there are more limited choices in some of the content areas. It's more difficult to find a math teacher than it is to find a third grade teacher. And we're looking for the best candidates out there, so,
As well we should.
we're not settling.
Okay,
And at
So-
the elementary level, I would say we had more applicants this year than we did last year.
good
And
to
we-
know.
So it looks like it is starting to come around a little bit.
Excellent. Okay.
Okay? All right, so
And so, wait, all right,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
You're doing the rest? No, you're
I
going
was going to do the
into
middle
more
school
detail?
first, and then
Perfect.
we'll switch over to
Yep.
Dr. Barczyk. Is that okay?
Yep.
All right. So you have a handout with 2 charts on it for middle school staffing. And as was mentioned earlier by Cindy, there's a specific reason why we divided this into 2 charts. The one at the top excludes performance music, so of course you can't have a band with fewer than 25 kids in a class. So there are classes at the middle school that are larger than 25, chorus and band. So those are taken out when you look up at the top.
Perfect.
You saw several times last year the timeline that the middle school administration put in place to make sure that they were going to be able to be scheduled, they were going to be able to keep their class size in control, and they were going to be able to get information out to students about what their schedule looked like in a timely manner. And this is their report as of this morning, as of yesterday morning, where they are. So they have scheduled 754 classes across the middle school, excluding music, of course. And their average class size right now is 14.5 students, which is
Wow.
spectacular.
Yeah, it is.
The number of classes with 25 or fewer students is 752. Right now, we have 2 classes. They are both 8th grade classes. They are both Latin. Those students took the first half of Latin in 7th grade, and they have expressed interest in taking the second half of Latin in 8th grade. So because we allowed more than 25 students in the class last year, of course, now we have more than 25 students moving up. So I believe as of yesterday, the classes are 26 and 28. I think one has 1 over and one has 2 over.
So are we providing extra supports as a result?
In that class, in the Latin class, we haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay, so that's one thing we might consider, right, with what we have left in terms of our whatever, watch positions.
Who's teaching that? Is that coming from the high school Latin teachers, or
No,
do we have a
middle
specific
school Latin
middle school Latin teacher?
Yes.
Okay.
So between teaching the 7th grade and the 8th grade and teaching exploratory, that takes care of an entire position for the middle
Okay.
school.
I mean, if it makes sense to have a support.
Right, if it's needed, that's
Yeah.
the piece that would be evaluated. If it's needed, that would be something we will discuss.
Okay,
So that puts them in a position right now where fewer than 1% of the classes in the entire building are over the 25-point cut. And obviously, you can see with an average class size of 14.5, there are also many that are under or well under that number.
that's awesome.
Well, this is fantastic because this is day and night from last year, so thank you.
Well,
I
Don't thank
appreciate
me, I'm
this.
just reporting the good news from the middle school.
Well, at least the message got through and got fixed. So.
I will tell you.
Can
yeah.
we just get the quick highlights in terms of what happened there? So it was schedule changes, tell us, how did we get to this result? High level.
So they started out last year looking at, in October, we actually took a close look at the schedule when we were sitting with 54 classes over 25 students in them and tried to make some adjustments at that point. And at that point, they identified some changes that, had it not already been October, would have made a great difference in the schedule. And they worked together with Dan Bechtold from the high school, using some of the strategies that they've used in the past to balance classes and keep their class sizes in check. We also brought in some support from SunGuard, our scheduling software program. They came in. All of our administrators at the middle school went to training in how to use the software package and how to best schedule the students in the right way. And they followed the timeline they shared with you, and as recently as yesterday, Lauren Rains, one of the 8th grade counselors, she spent 4 or 5 hours yesterday moving students around manually, and she got that number down from 5 classes over 25 to 2. Just by, everything is kind of a domino effect. So if you move a student from here to here, now he can't get the right math. And some of that handwork that has to happen at the end is really, I think, what helped to push them over the edge.
That's excellent on many fronts.
They did a good job.
And it was there was a lot of support from a lot of people, but the middle school administrative team worked very hard, to really develop a good schedule and to give the amount of time that's happening right now for counselors to be able to then make adjustments too. So I think it was a lot of the hours that the administrative team put in the early summer and through the summer has also helped with trying to set up those numbers. And we were all relieved to see that we talked about those potential other positions we may need, and we're relieved that we didn't have to use those.
Yeah.
But it also sounds very encouraging that it's a lasting kind of educational, broad-based understanding of more people than just a magic 1 or 2. Because it is a lot of moving parts. It's
Yeah.
a lot of stuff.
Well, that's great. That's great.
That's good.
It's great management. It's great teamwork. It's great foresight and planning. Really, all those things matter, and what a great result. So
I will pass that along to
nicely
Esther
done. And there's nobody here from the middle school, right?
They're exhausted.
No, you are.
But I mean, why is it that Esther and everybody always comes when there's a difficult?
Esther's here for.
We'll record
Eggs
this
and
and send this
tomatoes.
over to them.
Right?
It really is great. And then, again, this was as of yesterday morning, so this doesn't mean that, we have 9 students in the queue being tested to, float into the middle school this year, new student registrants and things that'll go into different classes. So it doesn't mean that we might have one other class that bumps
Right.
up
I
or
understand.
bumps close.
Yeah, understand.
But we won't be looking at 54, that's for sure.
Good.
Okay.
That's great.
And the other thing I gave you is the next slide again. You can do the math here and figure out that there are 10 classes of both chorus and music, different music classes that are over 25 students, which is right. The rooms are designed and right, exactly. So great result.
Actually, I'm going to take that even to the flip side and say that's even more encouraging. We have that many kids who are interested in being in
true.
class. It's not so much just about the class size, because I know we've expressed a concern about the lack of enthusiasm of the kids in terms of taking the music program. So is that something that is that on our subject list at some point to talk about? I know we've got the audit of the middle school on our agenda in the future, but maybe we could have a discussion about music at the middle school and how are we doing with that, and could we do it differently
We can look at that as
to
part
grow
of
the program?
middle
I'd
school
like to at
program
some point in the
evaluation.
year have that conversation.
Okay, good.
The other thing I wanted to mention about the middle school is August 29th, the middle school is going to be open from 1 to 6, so the typical event where students can come and walk their schedules, and so everyone will know where they're going, when they're going, and be comfortable and ready to start the first day.
That's nice too.
Good.
There we go.
Okay, elementary?
And now for the numbers chart.
All right.
So as you can see, and as it was mentioned, we met yesterday morning to end the cutoff in regards to where we were for our staffing. And at current situation right now, Ithan has the same number of sections they had last year, 22, with a little bit of change in those 2 grades at the bottom, as those 2 third and fourth moved down into 3 sections, and now it's 4th and 5th down moved into 3 sections. As well as Radnor Elementary remained currently at 29 sections, and that's what they were last year. And Wayne Elementary is down 1 section. They were at 30 last year, and they're down to 29. So we are obviously maintaining and looking at numbers as they come in and enrollments. At this time of the year, this isn't normally a time where we're seeing 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders coming in to register. It's normally the kindergarten or first, because kindergarten they've decided to either register their child now, and first they've opted to not do private school and come to public school. So
I'm, thank you, appreciate this information as well, and spelled out that clearly. but I'm going to express concerns about RES. 592 kids in that school. That building was not designed to, I mean, it was designed to be flexible, surely.
Not
but
that flexible.
Not that jam-packed. And so the fact it hasn't grown, great. But 29 classes means every pod space has been converted to a classroom and then some. So I think we need to have a very serious conversation about what's going on at Wayne Elementary School. And conversely, Ithan Elementary School is significantly down. And we just added classrooms to that building that we really fundamentally are not needing for regular education. So I really feel that we need to make this a priority discussion at some point this year.
I have a question about also Radnor Elementary, 4th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. So what's going to be our plan if one or two, a set of twins come?
Mm-hmm. So in the past, it's been a decision at that point if something were to occur after the first day of school. In the past, we have placed a paraprofessional in to support the classrooms. We've done that in the past. Actually, Patty, we were part of that discussion when I was at Wayne, and we ended up doing that. So there are options to help support the teachers and the students. Obviously, the students, the forward point there. But we do look at it, and we maintain and watch to make sure that we're abiding by what our classroom recommendations are at this time.
Yeah, I think that that's important, and I know everybody's doing everything possible, but the building is only so large.
Right.
The library is only so large. The
cafeteria.
cafeteria is only so large, and so it is worthy of some review at some point. And I have a great deal of affection for Radnor Elementary because both my kids were in the inaugural class. So, yeah.
So I know it's like we can't predict the future. I guess it would just be my preference. I think adding one more student is a little too tight. It would be my preference to add another class in the 4th grade there, but
But the question is, where
Where
do
are
you
you gonna
put
put
it?
it?
Where are you going to put it?
the 4th grade pod you haven't gone into.
Oh, but
have
you have, because you've
Where-
used that for 2nd grade. You
All
can
the
only-
classrooms at this point, all the classrooms at
completely
Radnor
full.
Elementary are.
gone into the 4th grade pod.
Well, think about it. Each one of the classrooms
Yeah.
has, yeah.
Well, that's
had
the
to
health.
have.
That's the health room down
No,
there.
because each pod was able to be 2 classes. So
No,
if you only have 4
extra pods,
classes,
only one extra class
one extra
in
class
a
in
pod
each pod.
space. One.
And they've
It's
all
true.
now been put
It's true.
into each of the pods
It's
at this
true.
point.
So unless we're going to use something like the computer lab, or what was the computer lab, as a real classroom, you don't have another place to put a classroom, Lydia, in that
Yeah,
building. It's
I
a
see you've
reality.
got 6 extra classes.
It's a problem. That's why I'm
Yeah.
saying I think we need to address it sooner than later.
And these are, overall, these numbers are something that each week, during the summer, we weekly meet and we're looking.
Daily
and,
at this point, right?
It is
Oh,
daily,
now,
yeah.
I'm sure.
over the summer, we held ourselves to weekly a few weeks ago, and I think the last 2 or 3 weeks it's been daily. But the larger discussion about the building and building capacity, I think, is a good point, and is something that when we're not in the midst of looking at the summer enrollments, but to sit down during the school year to look at is a good idea. So that is something we can take the time also to look at during the school year.
Take a step back. What was your plan if you did need to add another 4th grade? What were you going to do with that 7th extra classroom?
Well, then you're looking at the extra room. You're looking at the computer lab, or you're looking at the music room. You're
Right.
looking at one of the
You have
extra
to
spaces,
occupy
like we did
another
at
space.
Wayne when we
That's right.
converted the computer lab into a classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to say, Kelly and I were just talking to, I remember we talked about this a couple of weeks ago with the possibility, because we discussed this grade level, that there might be a space, or there still is the issue with the room. So, I mean, it is something that has been come up, and how would we do that has something that's been on the radar.
Yeah, we're
So
not.
we haven't decided that because we didn't need to do it, is what you're telling me.
Correct.
So you don't really have a plan, though. It wouldn't- and it-
Well, you're
Well,
always thinking about what your plan's
there's an
going
awareness.
to be.
There's certainly
Yes,
an
and
awareness.
whatever you do would not be ideal. Like, you're going
Right.
to take away another
That's,
space.
well, I mean, the
Okay.
reality is what we've already done is not ideal,
Yeah, I hear you.
quite frankly.
I hear you.
And,
Okay,
and it's run on too long. We need to address it.
agreed.
All right, very good. Well, we're
Thank you
close
for all
to
the
the
updates.
end. Thank you, oh, sorry, yes, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that, Tony.
And wait, in the original packet was the high school, the original packet had something about the high school, yeah?
No,
So-
today was designed just for elementary and middle
And middle
school,
school,
because when the
okay.
high school reported out in the full board meeting in the
Yeah.
spring.
Yeah.
Now, when we do the September report out, because there was
We'll get
that
the high
question
school.
last year, oh my God, that question last year about, well, the first week of school, do a bunch of students come and everybody's over? So we have a K-12 report out scheduled for September.
Thank you.
And then we'll have
Okay.
high school.
We have a Finance Committee meeting starting at 6, so we can have public comment, but I would ask you to be brief and non-repetitive. Thank you.
Hi, Gail Morrison again. This is, so comment going back to the assessment calendar. I just wanted to point out, I think there's still a little bit of a disconnect between what you all discuss and hear, and then what goes on in the classroom for teachers and parents. For instance, when you said, oh, Fontes and Pinnell is not given 3 times a year unless somebody's below grade level. That's not been my experience for the last 3 years. They were tested all 3 times, and my daughter was always grade level or above. So I think the teachers still think they have to do it for every single kid, and it's a very significant time drag when a teacher has to manage, I'm giving this kid a 30-minute assessment, and the other 23 kids in the classroom, what are they doing? So I look at this assessment calendar, and I still really worry about the finite number of minutes of instruction time we have and how much all of this takes. So I really wanted to point that out. I question, like Susan said, what exactly they get from Dibbles and how much time, because when this says 1-minute probe, it can't be that a teacher only needs 60 seconds. You have to stop what you're doing, you have to manage what the other kids are doing, you have to get that started, the phone rings because somebody needs early dismissal. It's a lot of time management. I have found all 3 years that the elementary teachers are, when I meet with them, I'm always surprised at how frazzled they are. And I think we need to be taking more from their day. I've said this a lot, I'm going to say it again. I think we need to edit out how much we ask every elementary teacher to do. And this is a good place to start. So, and then the second disconnect I meant there is that you guys think, oh, we don't give Fontes and Pinnell as much anymore, but the reality inside the classroom is they do, because maybe it didn't get communicated down or whatever. And then secondly, that disconnect, because you talk about, we heard this at that all-hands meeting, the PTO Coordinating Council meeting last year, that we want to convince parents that all this testing data we collect, we use because we pinpoint weaknesses that a child could be addressed. And I walked out of that meeting saying, I've never seen that. I don't think that happens. In other words, when you say, well, we give this many tests and it tells us that there might be a weakness for 4th grade for long division, and now I'm going to give your child X, like that it's said that you differentiate with it. I haven't seen that ever. I've been here 6 years, so I've never seen it happen. So I want to just be aware that we might be believing a little bit of our own happy talk on that part. And so staffing, just when you mentioned, I'm thrilled that you got a handle on the large class sizes at the middle school, because it was a big problem. And I want to reiterate, it wasn't in the thing, but then you later acknowledged that you had 54 classes over 25 last school year, because there was certainly a lot of unhappy parents, a lot of noise about it. And I think that's a good example for all of you, that when parents bring up these concerns, they're real, and they shouldn't be dismissed.
Hey, you had unhappy school board members too.
Yeah, yeah. But, sometimes you get a little bit of talk from one board member or another that it's not that bad, you're making it up or whatever. If the parents are feeling this, experiencing it, their kids are suffering from it, this is a new regime with Ken Batchelor that we acknowledge and fix. So I'm thrilled. So going down to what I meant to say was the staffing. Over to that, the RMS and RHS, when you have people who work both buildings, I've seen that not work. I hope we can avoid it. It feels like this staffing is so tight, we don't have much room for error. Like I saw that you added a .20 for high school chemistry. I think chemistry needs more than that. It feels like you're giving like as little as you can get away with. And I do know parents who've said, my kid's teacher has to get, even though it's 2 miles away, it's not that easy to do. To park to get in the building inside the tight building schedules, so maybe we can avoid it in the future. And that's it. I'll let Roberta go.
I would just, Roberta Winters, I would like to remind the board that you have a policy where you can have special meetings if you have lots of information on the agenda. And so please feel free to have special meetings. I think there are an awful lot of things on some of these agendas that will need more time than these meetings allow. And lastly, it's been in my history that sometimes when new people come into the district and there are class sizes that look too bad, that sometimes they're given the option of going to another school.
Thank you.
While we're waiting for Judy to come up, I would just like to comment that I really felt like tonight's meeting was streamlined, hit the high points. You accomplished a lot of stuff, meaningful information in a short period of time. Just want to commend you. That's the kind of meeting, honestly, that we need to have. There's a lot to talk about, and it's hard for us sometimes to stay on task too, but I really feel like you guys did a great job tonight.
All right. Judy?
Mandarin, bringing that up again, because again, it didn't run this year. While we're looking at the middle school curriculum, perhaps it's an opportunity to introduce Mandarin at that level, or at least try to figure out why isn't it running when it got such a positive reaction when we sent out surveys about it. And certainly runs in other schools. When writing is mentioned, one of the classes that personally I can attest to in terms of writing was Watershed for my own family. There was a lot of writing that went into it. I don't know if that's the way it's being run today, but I do think that that class has been very well received, popular, successful, and I like the idea of considering running 2 of the classes in the future, or multiple classes, so that it's not so exclusive. And when we're talking about a class that might be a little on the large side, like the Latin class, would you consider using a paraprofessional in there? Is that what you're considering when you think about support? And finally, with the topic of the size of Radnor Elementary School, I just want to bring to the board's attention, which, as you know, I've mentioned reviewing the tri-party agreement on multiple occasions, but are we still monitoring the numbers of vehicles, which are not to exceed 210 in most days, coming in and out? Because it says here in the agreement that we've agreed to, the number of vehicles shall be measured by a loop detector system to be installed and maintained by district at district's sole cost, as described in more detail in Exhibit 12. I'm not going to go through, I mean, this is actually much more elaborate, but that was, I think, a way of the corporation reducing the impact of the school and limiting the size of the school by measuring the number of vehicles. So, and that's part of this agreement.
Thank you, Judy. All right, we have our full complement of guests here for our Finance Committee meeting. Unless there is an urgent voice out there, I'm going to end this. And thank you very much for your participation, everyone. Well done.
I think